Okay,
Cool.
great. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And it's great to see so many people coming in. That number is, I'm watching it go up every couple of seconds. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day over lunch, especially to listen to us. I wanted to give a brief introduction of myself and Recruiter Labs, and then I will introduce the panel and hand over to them. So I'm Chloe. I run a company called Recruiter Labs, which is designed to help recruiters set up their own business. And we provide everything that they need to do their operations, finance, marketing, etc. And as part of our value add to our network, we host a series of webinars like this one and events throughout the year. This one we decided, in the current climate and for reasons you'll hear shortly, was going to be really attractive to a lot of people out there. So I'm gonna hand over to our panel for a brief introduction, and then we'll kick off. So over to you, Andy.
Hi everyone. My name's Andy Sellers. I'm a co-founder or the co-founder of 3Search, and 3Search is a marketing and digital marketing recruitment company predominantly. I also have founded a wider group called 11 Investments, which has other businesses as part of the portfolio. So in 3Search, just to kind of give you all a steer, I have a team of about 7 people pointing into the States, and then a wider group in other brands pointing into working in America as well. So that's me.
Great, thanks Andy. Over to you, Ollie.
Hi everyone, Ollie Amos. So work with Andy at 3Search, partner here at the business, and spent the first 7 years or so of my career in the UK market, and then launched the US side of 3Search alongside Andy 2-3 years ago now. Run our team and still an active recruiter in the States as well. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Maria Dry. I'm a US expansion consultant at PGC. For those of you who don't know who PGC are, we are a North American employer of record. So really that means we facilitate employment in the US, but a large part of our offering and solution is supporting a lot of UK and European staffing and recruitment firms expand into the US market and supporting them with navigating the landscape and complexities that come with that expansion.
Perfect. Andy, just before I hand over to you, I just wanted to touch on some admin about the structure of this session. What we're going to do is go through everything, and it's a kind of in a Q&A style. If you guys do have any questions at all, there should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Pop your questions on there, and then at the end we'll go through them and answer as many as we can. So if you can just do that throughout the webinar whenever you have a burning question. So great, thank you guys for introductions. Andy, over to you. Tell us a little bit about why we're here.
So I guess the history, or a little bit more history building on my introduction. So I started 3Search along with 2 others in the summer of 2014. As I mentioned in my intro, our bag is historically been marketing and digital marketing. We touch on things like bids and products and comms as part of that as well. And the majority of our business has been perm, and up until maybe 2019, 100% of our business had come from the UK and probably mainly London in that sense. The US expansion for us is quite interesting in that we didn't necessarily target it as an area of growth at the time. It kind of found us. We had 2 or 3 clients quite simultaneously ask for our help. The message was, look, we really like what you guys have done for us in the UK, and can you help us in the States? I'm sure there are other founders and co-founders on here, you kind of follow the nose and follow the money a little bit. And you kind of had to be honest with the client to say, it's not our normal bag, but we'd love to help if you're happy with working with us on it. And it was quite a quick realization that, which I'm sure we'll go into over the next however long we're on this for, but the opportunity was vast and the fees were vast compared to what we were seeing in the UK. So we kind of dipped our toe in the mid part of 2019, maybe start of 2019, and then kind of fully jumped in. Ollie was our best biller in the UK market, so we made the kind of brave and in hindsight probably quite crazy decision to move him to solely focus on recruiting in the States. We wanted to kind of be in for a penny and in for a pound in that sense. And have organically grown it from there. I'm sat in a London office. I live in London. Ollie lives in the UK as well. So one of the things that we can get into is what Maria will call recruit from afar. And in a strange way, the pandemic was a bit of a blessing in disguise for us, in that the expectation on meeting people face to face, I think, has changed quite significantly over the last few years, and the way that we all work has changed. So yeah, we have now built a team, a multi-million pound team in the UK, recruiting marketing and digital marketing professionals, learning and using some of our existing UK clients, winning a whole load of new US clients as well. And yeah, we've kind of had a hybrid of leveraging existing network and growing a network to grow a team who focus solely on the US. And as I mentioned in my intro, so we have other brands as part of our group that are doing the same and on the same journey. So I've kind of seen what's worked, what hasn't worked. So whilst we're fairly early on, I don't kind of sit here to pretend to be the expert in it. We've done it for the last 2 or 3 years now, and have had really good success. So hopefully that's enough. And Ollie, again, I need to be quite careful. Ollie does all the grunt work, the hard work. He runs the team and makes the money. So yeah, I shouldn't take too much of his thunder. So that's Ollie's background day to day.
Maria, kind of over to you. Why do you think there are so many recruitment companies that are seeing such a vast opportunity in the US?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And a lot of clients we'll speak to will be like, Maria, we're doing fantastically in the UK and European markets already. Like, why should we shift our focus to the US? There are a number of reasons why you should look at expanding into the US. But if I were to just kind of cover the top ones, and we can dig a little deeper into these as we go on as well. First of all, it is a much bigger market that is also much less saturated than the UK. So because of that, we're seeing clients get much more revenue and profit for the same amount of work and efforts that they would otherwise be putting into the UK clients or UK market. So on the perm side, we've seen clients get nearly double, sometimes triple the fee size for placements. And also speaking with CEOs and the business founders out there, if you are looking future wise to have exit plans, maybe selling your business, you're going to get a much bigger valuation for being in the US and for generating that revenue in the US. Just to touch on that kind of saturation point that I've just spoken about, one of the stats that always blows my mind and that we'll speak with clients about is, if you look at last year, the global staffing market globally generated $177.1 billion. 55% of that was generated in 3 countries alone. In third place, you've got the UK with 9% of that market share. You've then got Japan with 15%. And then more than 3 times the amount of the UK, you've got the US with 31% market share. Just to compare the UK and the US, in the UK, you've got 9% with 33 active agencies fighting for that 9% market share. Over in the US, you've got about 25,000 active agencies and 3 times that market share. So in terms of the market in the US, we always say it is a blue ocean market. You have got far more business to go after with far less competition. So we see that resulting in, your deal size being bigger, you being able to charge higher fees. UK recruiters as well are very well respected in the US market. It's very consultative and it's viewed far more as a respected profession. So you're far more of an advisor in the US as well.
Ollie and Andy, what have you found have been your kind of key learnings and the realities, I guess, of starting to recruit into the US?
You want me to do it, Ollie, or do you want to take that one?
I was just going to lead off the back of something Maria mentioned there around the competitiveness in the market as well. And one of the things that has probably led us to, and that we've changed a fair bit over the last 2 or 3 years, is the educational piece around what we actually do as an agency and as a consultancy has been huge for us. I think it's the UK market is so saturated. Everybody knows what a standard agency is going to deliver for them, and the consultancy and everything that comes with that. We find a lot of the pitch work that we do in the US is ultimately just actually explaining into real granular detail where we add value, what that process looks like in terms of, you know, screening candidates, running that process, presenting interviews and offers, and it's not really the expectation that they're receiving from the US agencies and the partners there. So I don't want to say the expectation level of what we deliver is lower, but you can go in and impress pretty hard by delivering what is, you know, a pretty basic offering over here. So yeah, that for us has been a huge learning curve just in the way that we pitch.
It's been,
Andy?
yeah, it's just been, and I've had to catch myself where you kind of, you know, bearing in mind I'd done maybe 12 years of UK recruitment before, you know, jumping in and doing the US. You kind of have your spiel, and clients have turned around to Ollie and I and said, you know, well, once you send us the resume, then, you know, we run the process, and you know, you kind of go, well, ultimately you pay the bill, and if that's what you'd like to do, then that's fine. But it is as basic as it having to explain, you know, that we're not just a resume factory, we're not just a kind of job center where we're sending you resumes, and that I'm not exaggerating to say that's what, you know, large corporate businesses, household names, that's the level of service that they get from often from local agencies. The other thing to say, we were in New York, and it was where Maria and I happened to meet last month. And again, I'm sure you all on the call can relate to the fact that you've got direct competitors or people where they're this kind of, the thing we talk about in our business is being an inch wide and a mile deep and being true specialists in your area. One of the amazing things is that, you know, in my world, the kind of, you know, the end customer, if you like, is often the CMO or the marketing director. And I met with perhaps a dozen people, and one of my questions, or the question I asked every time, is who is, you know, who are we competing with? Who is in your black book? And if I asked that question to my UK network, you know, you'd probably get a dozen different answers. Yeah, the word that kept coming up 3 or 4 times was that it was a free-for-all. And there's no, you know, there are no specialists. I can't maybe say there are no specialists, but significantly less specialist recruiters taking a very mature approach to a saturated market in the UK, where you have to hustle really hard to win work and make placements. It's just not the same. And so what we're finding is Ollie's graph that he would put into the UK market translates and pays back significantly more, because the US market just isn't like that, or it is much more immature. And when you kind of listen to what Maria says around the opportunity and the market, it's kind of mind-blowing that no one's grabbed it by the scruff of the neck yet. So kind of slightly different point to your question, but yeah, the having to explain what you do as a specialist has landed very, very well for us, where we're in front of VPs of marketing or CMOs to say, yeah, this is all we do all day, every day. And they've been quite taken aback to understand that that's not only our job now, but also been our job for quite a while. So yeah, that translates really nicely.
Yeah.
So it sounds all really positive, huge amount of opportunity, loads of jobs, loads of big fees, you know, it all sounds a no-brainer. What are the actual realities of working the US recruitment market from the UK in terms of actually doing the job?
I'll definitely let Ollie answer that one.
The glaringly obvious piece around being UK based and doing the US is, you know, naturally the hours. I think there's loads of different ways that different agencies and, you know, that are doing UK based and in the US structure that. But it's something you've got to be prepared to do ultimately. As where possible, stick to kind of the East Coast for obvious reasons. But, you know, if there's good quality work on the West Coast, we'll always do our best to accommodate that as well. But that's, you know, one of the things getting into it. You just need to be prepared that you are going to have that, you know, 3, 4, 5 days a week. Your evenings are swallowed up a little bit. The flip side of that, coming from, you know, having done UK recruitment for 7 years prior, is you get a really nice chunk of kind of 3 or 4 hours in the morning back, where you can really sort your, I don't want to say that the admin side of the job, but, you know, you can get all of that sorted and squared away, whether it's headhunting searches, you know, emails and all that kind of stuff, and you can really clear some solid time out to actually do some functional calls and that side. So it does have its positives and its negatives from that point of view. But yeah, that's the biggest challenge for us. And then yeah, it's getting out there and getting in front of people. I think like probably most people on this call, I'm trained in a way that you get in front of your best clients, you get in front of your best candidates. So it's, how do we work around that in terms of using technology and getting on video calls rather than quick phone calls, and getting out as regularly as we can do to get that face-to-face time in. But yeah, that's the kind of crux of it for us.
Yeah, and I'd just add something to that as well, if it's okay. So as Andy mentioned, we reference it as a recruit from afar. So when clients that have offices in the UK or Europe already that are thinking, hey, let's tap into the US market, let's service it from our existing office, it is actually fairly easy to tap into the US market from your existing office. As Ollie says, time difference is a big thing to maybe work around, and we've seen clients maybe shift hours back. So you're actually incubating a US team from the UK, so you shift those hours back. But one of the key things to really consider as well is just how big the US is. A lot of people might just say, hey, let's go and do the US market, but really it is like entering 50 different countries at once. Like, all different states have their own taxes and complexities and laws about recruiting, screening candidates, posting job adverts. So really being targeted, and just like Andy said, having that area of specialism and that niche or niche that they say in the US is going to pay absolute dividends in terms of attracting and retaining your clients. So really being quite strategic in your approach as well, rather than just saying, hey, we're going to do the US and we're just kind of going to mop up what we can. Like, really go in with the target and the location. As Ollie mentioned, we see the East Coast being quite popular whilst you're doing a recruit from afar, so you can really take advantage of those time differences.
There's loads of to try and give everyone on the call, and again, this is all sounding quite basic, but stuff that I'd been doing this market for 2 years, and about 5 minutes into meeting Maria, I felt quite sheepish that she said in her intro, well, we're an employer of record, and I was like, well, what's an employer of record? And I think that's predominantly, and hopefully she'll bail me out, but predominantly because we've done perm, or not predominantly, we've only done perm, and I think it's to try and give everyone on this call some stuff to take away. I'm keen for Maria to spend a few minutes talking about interim and contract, because I sat in front of her and learned for half an hour about how you would then payroll contractors, and the fact that dollar rates are quoted hourly rather than a traditional daily rate that you get in the UK, and a load of other stuff like that. Logistically, in my job, trying to set the business up, things like making sure all the team have got the right teams set up to have US phone numbers, making sure that they understand that it's a challenge around. We had it recently with and it happened to be on the day that the Queen's funeral was a national holiday. The following week was, I think it was Labor Day in the US. So you've got to navigate the logistical side of it, and that is a challenge. Just getting your head around terms of business and all the other things that comes with you can't just go, well, here's my UK terms, because, and again, as I've learned, each state has different laws, as Maria said, and you then pick a state where you can have the jurisdiction and the legal side of that state. Am I right, Maria?
Yeah, so your terms of business, yeah, spot on. So your terms of business will be reflective of a jurisdiction. So our terms of business, for example, at PGC reflect New York as a jurisdiction, but we can have blanket terms that will go state by state in terms of the business we do has to be compliant within those states. But if we as a business ever wanted to pursue a legal case or sue a client of ours, it will always reflect back to that jurisdiction that our terms are set. So even when you're setting up your terms of business, one of the first things we'll always say is get US terms of business in place for your contract and your perm clients, because you've got state by state varying case laws, and if anything were to go wrong, you're going to want to protect your UK business as an you're going to be positioned in the best place in terms of favourable laws.
Industry and particularly fees, making placements. I was always raised not to talk about politics, but the political situation at the moment kind of lends itself even more with a weak pound. If you can invoice in dollars, as you might imagine, the kind of current instability in what we're seeing in our UK business, which is presenting some more challenges than we've had for the last 15 or 16 months. The US business, the US economy isn't in that state of flux, and getting paid in dollars clearly has significant advantages. And Ollie and Ollie's team probably think Liz Truss is the best prime minister we've ever had at the moment. And there are, joking aside, there are formalities around how you're paid and making sure you've got the relevant dollar account. And again, that comes with, I'm very fortunate that we've got a finance infrastructure to help that. But having that infrastructure to be paid in dollars, and then knowing when the right time is to transfer that dollar back into the pound and that kind of thing, again, it's not straightforward, but it's very easily overcome as long as you have your ducks in a row, would be my advice.
Yeah, and just to touch on that as well, with recruit from afar models, because we see a lot of US clients like to do business with US focused or centric businesses. I always refer to it as a bit of a shop front, like get US telephone numbers in place, get your US dollars in place, get US even in your signature and your LinkedIn content, like everything you're pushing out, make sure you're geared towards that you are focused on the US. You're going to increase your credibility, and clients are going to be far more reciprocative to you kind of BDing them than you looking like a UK business sat in London that's just being reactive to opportunities coming in.
I was just saying, I just kind of back up what Maria's saying there. We've kind of shifted all of our terms, LinkedIn profiles, phone numbers, everything to look externally as if we're on the ground in the US effectively, and it gets you over that initial hurdle, because once you're on a call with somebody and you talk it through, it's easy enough to talk about that and how it works and the benefits to them of that. But getting on that initial call, naturally, you need to have that in play beforehand. So yeah, just kind of emphasise on Maria, we've seen an active improvement because of doing that.
To give everyone a live, Maria in her intro said businesses often see double or triple fee sizes. I'm conscious that might sound like a throwaway comment, and to try and give you a live example of a placement that Ollie's team have made this week. I won't name the business, but it's a big global consultancy firm. We recruit for them in the UK, so we're very aware of the salary bandings. We're on their UK PSL. A marketing manager, or a middle manager, in our world, that's a marketing manager. In the UK, that business would pay somewhere in the region of 50, 55, 60,000 pounds. So, at 20%, you can do the maths. Ollie has had that level, Ollie's team, that level of role in New York, take over role, but you've just placed that, I think, $157,000 for the same role, the same level. So it's not a flippant comment to say you're making twice or three times as much money. We are literally invoicing three times as much on that invoice than we are in our UK business. Just to kind of bring that to life for everyone, because that might be helpful.
Phenomenal. And have you guys found that actually it's a lot of a quicker market because of obviously the likes of your notice periods are at will on both your contract and your perm side for you guys? Have you found Ollie actually working that role was quicker in terms of you getting that worker starting and kind of placed?
Yeah, definitely. I think because there is that attitude. Ultimately, most people, for the majority, are giving a 2-week notice, so the holes in teams appear much more quickly ultimately, and there's much less time for people to prepare for having that hole in the team. So I think the pressure to have the role filled is upon them much quicker than it is in the UK market. So yeah, you tend to find that we can get through processes very quickly. A lot of the guys in the team are focused towards more of kind of the startup market, and it's not unheard of us for to have a first stage interview on a Monday, second stage Monday night, and then final on the Tuesday. Candidate starts the following week. So it is and we, as Andy said, we only do perm in the US, but it feels much more like a temp market in terms of the pace that we work at, and the expectation from the candidate side as well is they're chasing you for feedback after 24 hours of the interview if they've not heard anything, because the expectation is there that is how quickly that market moves. So yeah, it's definitely something to be conscious of.
It's also worth, and again, I can't look everyone in the camera, and with an enormous sample size, we've got a decent perm business in the US that's doing really well, but the aggressive buybacks that we've certainly experienced in our UK business, touch wood, for Ollie and Ollie's team, we haven't seen, there just is, I probably should choose my words carefully, but a far more transactional approach and a transactional feel to the US labour market, in the sense of, moving jobs feels and seems much more transactional, much more common. Candidates aren't bought back in the same way, and the business kind of, when someone moves on, it is just generally feels like it's okay, well, we need to just find someone else. And again, from for everyone on this call running businesses and maybe running small businesses, less buybacks, quicker time to invoice is huge.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on something that you said, Ollie, obviously about notice periods being different, and there's certainly a huge amount of differences between the actual recruiting in the US versus recruiting in the UK. Things like the notice period, not being able to discuss salary, for example, is a massive change to how people in the UK are used to doing it, right? So can you give us any other examples of key differences that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that just kind of elaborating on that salaries point is one that we come back to constantly, because again, you're so used to in the UK, you want to know what salary somebody's on, their expectations, and it's something that candidates are very 99% of the time very happy to talk about. The majority of the states in the US, you can't ask people what their current salaries are, so it's much more about finding out expectations. From my own experience, and this is completely anecdotal, the candidates feel less comfortable talking around their salaries and what they're looking for next than in the UK. And I think part of that is because they're harder to pin down on a number, I suppose, is what I'm getting at there. So there's an element of training and learning in that perspective. The other side around benefits is really important as well. I'm sure you're all aware of the way that medical insurance is set up over in the States, but naturally that's something that comes up on a lot of calls when talking around packages, options and shares. Again, we seem to be more prevalent in the US market than they are over in the UK. So again, it's something that we're constantly talking about, is sign-on bonuses or paying out share options, and how can we get creative with offers. So without wanting to kind of overdo it a little bit, it's just getting into that much more granular detail around a specific package as opposed to a basic salary number or something like that, which is difficult when you can't talk to somebody about what their current salary is. So that's been a pretty significant learning curve. And it's also something, again, back to my point earlier around education, and part of what Andy said is, working with UK clients to hire them people in the US. And it's a constant question that we have is, what salary are they on? That we can't answer, and we just need to educate around that so our clients don't get themselves in trouble in interviews as well and ask those questions.
Great. One for you, Maria. I've had a couple of, I know I'm not supposed to be looking at the Q&A until the end, but I've had a couple of questions coming through about logistics, and really either recruit from afar, or I think the term is land and expand. Let's talk about recruit from afar, because that's what we've been talking about so far. Insurances, or actual company setup. What would your recommendation be for how you can logistically get off the ground?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think one of the greatest things about the US market is the low barriers to entry. So a lot of people think, oh, do we need to incorporate? Do we need to register? And actually, because of the way the tax and the legal system is structured in the US, you can do what we call a recruit from afar. So you can do this right from your existing office, from your UK entity. You'll just be classed as an alien business because you're actually carrying out the work and the operations from outside of the US. You're not creating what you would call a tax nexus. There are absolutely key considerations to be aware of when it comes to sales tax, when it comes to laws. So absolutely advise, get your legals in place, speak with a legal expert, a US attorney, speak with a tax specialist. Again, it will change state by state. Each state has a certain threshold in which you can build up to before your sales tax incurs. So a lot of businesses, whilst doing a recruit from afar, will track what they're generating in each state. On the perm side, it is actually really quite simple. You can just bill basically your introductory perm fee. On the contract side, that's where it gets slightly more complicated, when you're payrolling, insuring workers, engaging them, extending benefits, and that's where PGC come in. But absolutely, if you're doing a recruit from afar, you've obviously got to think about the operational aspects, but the legals, the tax and insurances, so ensuring your UK business and your US operations.
And would you recommend actually setting up a US business, or can you keep that going from your UK limited company?
Yeah, so we'll tend to see kind of people do a UK recruit from afar to start, whether it be 12, 18 months. You're going to lower your risks, lower your taxes, and obviously build a load of knowledge. And then 9 times out of 10 clients will be like, whoa, we're outbilling our UK desks already. These fees are crazy. We're thinking seriously about the US market now. Let's think about what we would then call a land and expand. Let's be strategic. Let's look at state strategies. Let's get incorporated. Let's register an entity. Let's start applying for our E2 business visas. But absolutely, to start, we just say kind of use your UK office and your base to tap into the market whilst you're building that knowledge, insights, seeing where your clients are, seeing where the main hubs are before you do that land and expand, getting incorporated and registering.
Certainly seems a safer way of doing it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just
test the market out before you dive straight in.
And some of our clients actually don't have any intention to do a land and expand, and they are purely US focused, operating from the UK.
Okay. One for you, Andy, and Ollie, just touching again on the differences in between the UK and the US. What's the appetite for retained versus contingent work out in the US that you're seeing?
I can go, yeah. So I'd say our success rate with it is probably higher in the US. I don't know if it comes down to ultimately just being one, more trusting of recruiters, because I think, you know, the majority of clients haven't been burnt in the past in the way that a lot of UK clients have. So there's that element of trust there. It's a much more service-led environment. I think there's a lot more respect for kind of the sales and recruitment industry, and just ultimately part of that is being comfortable paying up front. So yeah, there's absolutely an appetite to retain. The model that, you know, there's loads of different models obviously that you can go down with the retained route, but we don't tend to have too much pushback on it. So yeah, absolutely an appetite to do that over there.
It's worth just jumping in, and Ollie, I think it's probably important to talk about the nature, the practicalities of, you know, in the UK, we're seeing a lot of clients asking for people to go back in to an office 2 or 3 days a week. Given the nature of our country and the geography of our country, you know, people are never that far away compared to what we see in the States. Ollie, just want to talk about the attitude around remote working as well, because I think, you know, talking about retainers, it is easier to sell a retainer based on, I think, what Ollie's about to go on and say around a lot of American businesses have adopted a fully remote strategy, or more so than the UK. Is that fair?
Yeah, completely. And it does change state by state. And I'd say a lot of the larger clients that we've got that are New York based specifically have a desire to have people back in the office. I think there's also a concern that they know that to hire the best people for their teams, they can't realistically ask people to come in really any more than 2 or 3 days a week at an absolute maximum. There's areas where, you know, I think we were talking about it earlier, Andy, a client based on the West Coast have an office out there and are moving away to a more remote first approach, purely just for the cost of talent and saving themselves some money on the salaries there. So it's much more remote first. And then, you know, linking that back to the retained piece, if you're looking at doing effectively a nationwide search, the time that comes with that to go out and find that caliber candidate is naturally quite time consuming. So it adds another piece to your ammo around why you would be able to pitch retained and why they would pay you that bit up front for the additional research and time there. But yeah, much more remote first, and the clients that we're talking to, if they are asking people to come back in, are really struggling to get people back in the office.
Ollie, a question we get asked quite often is about actually sourcing the candidates. So like equivalents of job boards in the US, LinkedIn Recruiter. I mean, 9 times out of 10, our clients say, you know, it's LinkedIn Recruiter is kind of the way forward. Have you guys found that, or are there any job boards that you've seen? Completely,
actually, yeah. It's something we were probably pretty conscious of, is that we were, I don't want to say over reliant on LinkedIn, but it's where all of our placements there or thereabouts came from. And it's something that, you know, I've asked the team to do over the last kind of few weeks, and whilst we were out in New York, was, you know, actively talk to our candidates around where they go out and find their work, what job boards are they using. And to a person, it was every single candidate spoke about LinkedIn. A couple mentioned Indeed, but in passing and not particularly kind of positively. So the majority of it was through LinkedIn. And again, going back to, you know, the point we made at the start of the meeting around the saturation of the market, candidates aren't getting approached as often. So the cut through that we get from our in-mails and the messaging around that is significantly higher. And yeah, the approach to it is higher. The other area that I'd say we have more success in the US than maybe in the UK is candidates are really happy and a lot of the time very keen to share their own networks. So we get a lot of candidates through from referrals and, you know, even from hiring managers saying, you know, I'm not right, but somebody in my team that's due for a promotion, would love to put them in front of you. That I just didn't experience anywhere near as much in the UK. So there's a lot more desire to help as well from the candidates over there. But yeah, two main areas are definitely LinkedIn Recruiter and referrals.
There's 100% a different mindset around just building on his point, a networking mentality. And one of the meetings I had, I went to it and you know, you kind of try and establish, well, what are you looking for from this session? And he just turned around and went, well, I thought your email was great, and I thought it would be really great to connect and meet. And it's not really a culture that I think enough British businesses or British people have around, you know, that desire to network. And especially kind of going back to one of my earlier points, if you are a specialist and you do, you know, one or two verticals or one market, that concept of saying to the individual, I'm a specialist, it's my bag, and, you know, I want to get to know you and know your network. People are much more approachable in that sense. And then, I'm conscious you might have some questions, Chloe, but the one thing that I wanted to cover just around who we are competing with, you know, in the UK, as I've said, we have, you know, established other competitors who do what we do. Whereas I would argue that the majority of the competition in the States, you're competing with internal teams. Businesses in America will spend more money on in-house functions. So you're often up against direct. You know, if a candidate is in multiple processes, correct me if I'm wrong, Ollie, they're not being represented by other recruiters as much. They are being headhunted by other in-house teams sat on LinkedIn Recruiter, which kind of, again, feeds back into this concept of us specializing in one area. You know, that internal individual will have roles across, you know, HR or finance or all the disciplines that those internal talent people have to recruit in, whereas we go to
You might have just lost Andy there.
To finish his point, the kind of the piece where we can sell the most is that specialist area, because we're competing against internal talent who, you know, like every talent acquisition person, you know, they're working across multiple different areas and they're, you know, getting to grips with that. So the biggest competition you've got is with talent acquisition and the internal teams rather than agencies. And ultimately that means the majority of the work you're getting pitched for or kind of coming back to is exclusive. But it's really helpful to dig down on how good that talent acquisition team is and really class them as a competitor.
Great, thank you for that. Just talking on the questions, we've had loads of questions through. Thankfully, actually, quite a lot of the same questions, but I'm not sure we're going to get through them. Actually, Ollie, with your last talk about, you know, does LinkedIn work in the US, and how do you find candidates if you don't know where to start, has ticked off quite a few of the questions we've got in. One quite common recurring question we're getting is about rebates. What is the stance on rebate periods in the US? Are they different from the UK, and what does that look like?
I think I'm back.
You are back.
Do you want to take it, Maria, or do you want me to answer that?
It'd be great to hear your experience, then I can add on what we've kind of seen clients put together.
I'm worried I'm going to say the wrong thing here, but the terms of business. So our standard rebate period on our UK terms is 8 weeks. You know, often clients will ask to extend that to 12 or 13 weeks, and we have seen no change in the US with our US client base. So yeah, anywhere from 8 to 13 weeks is fairly standard. It would be my answer, but Maria might correct me that I'm getting it all wrong.
No. What I would just add on to that, obviously, because you've got your at-will notice periods, we've seen a lot of our clients been advised from US attorneys that because legally workers can be let go, without reason, without notice, both sides, so your client and your workers, is that we've seen clients put into their terms that it has to be, under a certain set of reasons as to why that client is let go, just so you're protecting yourselves as to you're not just going to be asked for another replacement, and it's going to be double the time, double the cost to recruit. So you're protecting yourselves that only under a certain set of circumstances would that rebate period apply.
Maria, can I just, one thing that I learned sat in New York when we had our meeting was, and again, this is perhaps showing my naivety over the years, but this concept of an at-will notice period versus, American candidates would often tell us that they have a 2-week notice period.
Yeah.
I think it's really good for you just to explain, and hopefully in a layman's terms, because I learned as well, what do you mean by at-will notice, and what does a candidate mean when they say 2 weeks? Because I think that's really important, a good thing for people to take away, because I learned something new in New York with you.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. So at-will notice period, and this applies federally, so across all 50 states in the US, that legally there is no requirement for a candidate to give any notice to their employer, equally vice versa for the employer to the candidate. However, what we do see is a requested notice. So we always position it as kind of required versus requested. A lot of clients and candidate will adhere to a requested notice, which we see as 2 weeks, but legally there is no requirement. But as you say, you'll speak to candidates and they'll say, oh, we've agreed to a requested notice of 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd say on the ground as well, one of the, quite often you'll ask a candidate what their notice period is and they won't know that terminology as well. So, how quickly can you start or something along those lines? And it does tend to be more of an out of courtesy, 2 weeks or 4 weeks, as opposed to, being stuck to a specific amount. And I think what really surprised us was that doesn't seem to change at all depending on seniority. So, you've got people running 30, 40 person teams, VP level, and they're still on a 2-week courtesy notice.
Yeah, and that's where again we see recruitment and staffing firms being far more partnered with end clients. Like the thought of a UK recruiter picking up the phone to a hiring manager and saying, hey Andy, we've just had our head of or our marketing manager leave, we need to fill this role. Like actually it's far more two-way street rather than in the UK, and it could be quite a salesy role that you're just kind of picking up and looking for jobs. Because of that at-will notice period, it means it is a really transient market, which is great because recruiters are getting phoned about jobs and being briefed on roles where candidates have left at short notice.
One other thing I want to touch on, earlier we spoke about what the potential to earn is and what the fee sizes are. A couple of people have asked what kind of average margins you guys are agreeing with your US clients.
One anecdote, that one of Ollie's team joined, he had 12 months or 18 months experience. His first placement was a VP of marketing, and it was a $94,000 fee. So to kind of dangle a carrot to everyone listening to this, the opportunity is real. The rebate, the fee terms, the honest answer I would give to that is where in the UK, the standard is probably somewhere between 15 and 18% from everyone that I speak to, or whenever I interview people or running our UK business. That 15 to 20 translates into America to more like 20 to 25. I would always urge you to start higher if you're dealing with an American business. We've had scenarios where we've gone in at 30% and it hasn't, the client hasn't batted an eyelid. So yeah, there is a general theme that you will get a better margin in the States. I'd be lying if I said that every single mandate we picked up was at 25%. We land in and around the average of 20 to 25 rather than 15 to 20 would be my commentary. But again, Ollie can, he's on the ground delivering the work, so he might have a different answer.
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree. And I think we have less of those moments where the client goes, yeah, we've got standard terms, we'll send them over, and you inevitably know that it's going to be 15%. I think one of the guys had somebody exact same situation, send the terms over and it's 22.5% exclusive as standard. And they were like, can you guys work to that? I know it's a bit low. So the expectation is just that it doesn't go lower than 20%. We've never had any pushback to go lower than 20. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that is one of the key pieces of advice we say. Do not take your UK pricing strategy to the US. We saw across Q1 and Q2 clients going in at 30% as a minimum, and then, as you guys say, about 25% as an average, but that being tied with your high salaries as well.
Great. A couple more questions, and then I'm conscious that we're going to start running over. Probably again one for you, Andy and Ollie, but Maria, I'm sure you've got a good input on this one. How often would you recommend going out actually to the US, meeting clients, having a kind of physical presence out there in a year, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, that answer is probably as long as a piece of string, in that, getting in front of people and, doing as much client-facing work as possible is optimal. In reality, we are targeting ourselves or aiming to, we go out once a quarter. So we were out in September, we're going to go out again in December, and probably then at the back end of March or April, depending on Easter. So yeah, I mean, and again, this is a very basic tip to give, but yeah, where I could have done a bit more was more planning, more strategy around getting meetings booked in, and you can always get more from those trips. That's fairly full on, as Maria and I kind of swap notes. You're on the go all the time, and again, one of the challenges is we've got clients in Boston, Chicago, New York, so it's not always about going back to New York all the time. It doesn't have to be New York centric. So yeah, once a quarter is the short answer to your question.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to finish off with one last question. And to everyone who has asked questions that haven't been answered, I've got all of them. We'll follow up directly, and we'll also send some comms out of key learnings and points from this discussion. So if you haven't had your question answered, we will reach out to you. And certainly everyone that's asking questions about operational setup, like how do I get a US phone number, all that kind of stuff. We know all of that, and we can give you some help on that too. So we will follow up with you. The last one I wanted to ask, it's probably one for you, Andy. Sorry, I'm really putting you on the spot here.
Okay.
But this is presumably from a founder or a would-be founder, and they've said, what would be your biggest piece of advice for an established recruiter looking to go out on your own?
Well, Maria turned around to me in New York and said a lot of people that she speaks to who are thinking about setting up on their own are thinking about flirt with the US, and will sit on video calls or webinars like this. And her answer, and I hope I'm not saying anything I shouldn't, Maria, but she was just like, I don't know why on earth you'd consider doing the UK market when you could solely focus on the US market. So my answer to that would be to be all in on it. And where we made mistakes in the early days was trying to, you try and flirt with doing the UK market and the US market. You can make some money, and we've know anyone that we've recruited all sorts of stuff back in the day. That's a whole nother webinar for another session. But yeah, be all in is my answer.
I think we got most of that. Be all in, I
Sorry.
think, was the main piece of advice, but it's definitely good advice. I think we'll close things off now, unless you guys have any last final words of wisdom for our attendees.
No, I would just say, just do it. It's a beautiful business. You'll be rewarded. For anyone watching that wants to find out a little bit more about PGC, what we do, how we help, please just reach out on LinkedIn. I'm keen to speak with as many of you as possible and hear the successes you've either already had or are planning on having.
Great stuff. And
definitely do it.
Oh, sorry, Andy. I think there's a bit of a delay here.
I don't know if anyone can hear me, but yeah, definitely do it. Yeah, as I say, I learned a lot from Maria over 45 minutes for a coffee. So I would echo and support her. And yeah, if you want any help, pick up the phone and ask her. And yeah, the operational stuff, get a load of support. I'm lucky that I've got a great team that help me, but that's Chloe's sales pitch, so she can close that at the end. So
I'm just going to add on to that. Anyone here who is a an ambitious recruiter who is thinking about setting up on their own, be it, you know, a short-term goal or something you're just thinking about for the future, get in touch, ask us how we can help you. You know, happy to have a no strings attached chat with anyone who wants to pick my brains on how it all works. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. We're here to help. Thank you so much to everyone who's attended. Thanks for giving up your time, and thanks very much for our panel.
Pleasure. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.